We are activating your unique self-discovery one show at a time. The Orchard of Wisdom Self-Discovery podcast are at your fingertips, just waiting to inspire and invite you in discovering just how awesome you really are and how to navigate through life in joy, enrichment, personal abundance, in mind, body, spirit, heart, and soul. All the people we bring you are here to serve you on your journey of life. Do enjoy our next show. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Their Story Matters, right here in selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Gordon Knight. Well, he has a book that he wants you to read, but it's got banned. Why is it got banned? Because he's revealing corruption. Canadian corruption, American corruption. The book is called Deep Six Diaries, and it's a true story of one little guy trying to defend himself, his business, his elderly father, from bullying bureaucrats and government criminality. You know, we think that wherever we are, our governments are above that. They're never going to do that. But we see it over and over again, things being covered up. And we love to point fingers, but really what we should do is actually understand what is going on and what are we empowered to do about it. Well, his book is being banned. Nobody's allowed to read it. Why? If they were so innocent, why won't they be able to put it out there? Because they could defend it. It's been banned both in Canada and in America, though we do hope that it's going to be on Amazon in the next few weeks. He said it will shock you, but you can't be blamed for not knowing. Canada's been suppressing news and all of this, even banning explosive book exposure, the whole sordid tale, and that the US government outsourced its control on product safety and importation to other governments in foreign countries, in this case, Canada. That's not bad enough, it gets worse. Well, there's a lot of that it's getting worse here, and I could read it all, but I'd rather that we just talk about it. What in the first place actually brought him to this attention of what is going on, what really is going on, but also, folks, what are we empowered to do? Because government doesn't change unless we point the finger at them and hold them accountable and demand the change. So welcome to the show, Gordon.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
So tell us this tale of how this all came about. I mean, you're a Canadian citizen living your life. What happened to start this cascade of events that have happened to change your life so much so to leave the country?
Sure. It's a tale of woe, but we've got to hopefully we can pull a happy ending out of it. I was a family business. I own a family business, a publishing company. We published electrical guidebooks in Canada for the Canadian market. And we've been doing that, Sarah, since 1967. So we've been around for a long time. Our challenge began in 2011, 2012, right at the sort of the changeover that year, when the government of Canada decided they were going to sue us for copyright violation. Because in order to explain how to wire your kitchen, say, safely, we have to quote the law. We have to refer to the rule of law and say, this is how you do it. And of course, people don't know this, but the Canadian government is actually competing in the markets that they regulate, including the publication of electrical guidebooks. So they are our only competitor in Canada. And to use their governmental authority to try to push out their competitors out of business, and that was us. So their argument before the court then was that we're not allowed to refer to the rule of law without paying a royalty for it and without getting their permission. Now, okay. Sarah, just let's evolve. If you drive to work or take the bus or something, but you've seen speed signs. We all have seen them.
Yeah.
We have to obey the speed sign because it's posted. But somebody lobbied for that speed sign.
Right.
You say that it's privately owned, then nobody has the right to know what the speed is, but they still have to comply with it. This is impossible.
Oh, you have to pay a fee every time you see it.
Something like that. Yeah, it's crazy. Naturally, I tried to defend myself against this. And I'll just for the benefit of your listeners, I had never been in court before, so I'm very new to it. I just assumed that if I'd done nothing wrong, I've got nothing to fear.
Right.
And I'm very naive, honestly. The fact is that the civil service in Canada actually controls the court system through what's called the Court Administration Service. It's a branch of the Department of Justice. That means that you can have some good judges, some bad judges. They're just groups of people like any other group. But people forget that behind the judge, all of the mechanics of the court system are handled by civil servants. What happens when those same civil servants are the ones profiting from in this case, the plaintiff's case. And the answer is they can arrange rulings. We have rigged rulings in Canada. People don't know this. In my particular case, the agency that was suing me is what's called CSA Group. It likes to call itself a private company. It's actually a federally chartered government agency reporting to Industry Canada. It's as civil service as you're ever going to get. So for the judge, the civil service appointed a CSA employee to be the federal judge between myself and his colleagues.
Conflict of right there.
It reaches about 4 different sections of the judicial conduct principles. But this is what they did. And of course, naturally, the judge ruled in favor of his colleagues. Mm-hmm. So we had what's called Manson's Law that came out of that ruling. And that ruling states that whomever it is drafted or contributed to the rule of law owns that law privately. And they have the right to restrict access to the law. You're not allowed to read it if they don't want you to. And they can invoice the government every time the law is enforced or used.
But these are government people working for the people through the government. We are employing them to do their job. Okay, I'm confused.
That's the theory, because they're being paid. They're salaried employees of the government. So this is effectively a way for them to give themselves a top up on their salary that isn't scrutinized by anybody. So it's a huge cash cow. And of course, it also has the effect of shutting down any little business like mine. And Sarah, that's how the whole thing got going. Now, you know, I've fought this now for 11 years.
Wow.
This business of private law has gone all the way to the Supreme Court. It's been upheld all the way along. So it is no longer litigible. But you know, Sarah, in that process, in that 11-year process, I was going public about it. I had a website, deep6diaries.com. I was publishing every week. I published an article on how things are going. And I started getting whistleblowers from inside the government. Because not every civil servant is a crook, you know. We've got to
keep it. Exactly. It's always the very few, right? You know, the mafiosos. They pull the strings on everyone else. Yeah.
Exactly. So I started publishing some of this stuff, and they were giving me, look, Sarah, they were giving me shocking stuff, all right? The federal civil service is actually selling influence over domestic laws. So if you want a law changed to your liking, you pay them money, and in trade, they will change the law to your liking. This is a massive crime. I released this. I posted all of the evidences for it. And that's embarrassing. So and this went on and on and on. You want to know why they're banning the book, Sarah? It's because of stuff like that.
Right. Well, you know, it's, well, I would say, you know, kind of when we compare ourselves to a few other countries and one you're in right now, you know, we might have some less embarrassing stuff, but this still doesn't mean to say that we do not have corruption. If we have human beings in power who have the power to dictate what happens in people's lives, they have the ability to be corrupt. It's up to them whether they choose to be corrupt or not. But that corruption is just so easy for them because they're the ones defending it and pulling the strings, and anybody who points it out. We've seen this in Iran. We see this in many other countries, China or anyone else. Anyone stands up to the government, and in those cases, they're obliterated. Here, they just wanted to obliterate your existence, not physically, but as a presence.
Yes, that's pretty much it. And, you know, because the civil service control the court system as well, really, they can't be prosecuted. So you have essentially immunity from the law.
Where's the accountability then?
Well, there isn't any. That's kind of the problem we're highlighting here. A specific example. With this pay-to-play stuff, that is a massive breach of law. It's a breach of about 5 different sections of the criminal code. And so about 5 years ago or so, something like that, I actually submitted what's called an information with a capital I to the court, which is a way that a civilian person, a citizen, can approach the court and request a prosecution for crimes that have been verified and witnessed and documented. And this was obviously a big danger to them because they're bringing in 60 to 90 millions annually in pay. That's a big deal. So this went to court, but because they control the court system and the prosecutor's office, if you can believe this, a justice by the name of Odita Kamina in Ontario ruled that it is no longer a crime to bribe public and elected officials in Canada.
She actually said that?
Yes, with specific dollar examples, by the way. He gave a series of examples and said, if you pay $50,000 to a judge, say, that's okay, provided he had 3 caveats. I can't remember them all, but the first was you could not bribe people based on their race. So if you're going to bribe, you have to bribe racial equality-wise. You have to bribe black judges and white ones. Okay. The second was that you had to do it in the light of day. That's right. You could not bribe people secretly. You had to do it publicly. And if you fulfill these criteria, you're good. And the rationale was, he actually said this line, it can't be a crime because the government is doing it.
But wait a moment, let's pause. Let's pause here a second and digest this.
I'll bet.
It is, nobody is above the law.
Well, theoretically,
Nobody is meant to be above the law.
here you go. I
Right.
agree with
Right. And when you put on a gown as a judge, or when you take on any position of authority where you actually have authority over other people, you're meant to have an integrity that is meant to be high and above. And you're saying openly, candidly, publicly, he's saying you can bribe. You can
Yes.
bribe a civil service, you can bribe a judge as long as it's not racially. You can you bribe any judge of any color. We're not going to be racist about this. It's a joke. Where is the justice? So if somebody's trying to get justice for something that's happened to them, but somebody else on the other side can bribe the judge in their favor, where is the justice?
There isn't. It is not a justice system that you've been referring to things like equality under the law, for example.
Right.
If you obliterate that, we have what used to be called might makes right. That is, whoever has the power gets what they want, irrespective of what the law says.
Right.
Do you remember a few years ago, we had the sad passing of a journalist by the name of Christy Blatchford? Do you remember Christy Blatchford?
Yeah, vaguely. I know the name. I don't know the work.
He was a reporter for a number of newspapers in the East on criminal justice issues. And I sat down with her after the Odita ruling on bribery. And she was just like you. She was just floored over this thing.
Mm.
And then she asked me who the judge was. And I gave the name. And her response, I can quote it directly, he said, "Oh, he's a moron." This is the reality of it. People are appointed to the bench not based on their capabilities, but based on their political alliances.
Right. Yeah.
In the case of judges, they're actually appointed by the bar associations. So the question, it's actually technically the prime minister appoints them, granted, or the premier, but they just get names of recommendation and they just sign off on it. So the people making the choices are the bar associations. So you end up with a relatively small clique of people who run the association who decide justice for the whole country. And if they're appointing people ideologically rather than judicial principle, we end up with a very perverted and corrupt system.
Which is what we have. And, again, worldwide at the present moment, I think it's got out of control. I'm going to refer to the States here when you see people like DeSantis and Herschel and Trump himself, and you look at these people and, 10, 15 years ago, these people wouldn't have got anywhere near politics. And then it just kind of be the Gong Show opened up. And you look at who these people are, that just listen to what they say, and you kind of wonder, how can they be a person in position of where they're meant to be serving the people, defending the people, empowering the people, when they can't even string a sentence together. And it is mind-blowing where politics has gone. And, I do think that we as a public for so long, and of course we've seen it with American publics, I'm here in Canada, we've seen it because it's been on every news for God knows how many years now. 6, 7 years has just been a joke of everyone along the way. And of course, Fox News likes to take a pimple and make it into a volcanic eruption. Anything for sensationalism, right? We've become rather numb. And I just don't want to know. I just don't want to know. Until it's something that you're up against and you go, but hang on, where's the justice? You decided to turn a deaf ear and a blind eye to what was obviously happening in front of your face. And now when you're in need of that support, you're wondering why you're not getting the justice. And this is as a society, it doesn't matter which side of the pond we're on, we really do need to look at what is going on in our politics. And there should not be the favorism of the buddy club or the backhand. I think we have to strip it right down. And are you qualified, not just academically, morally, Are you qualified? Do you have actual compassion? And are you really here to work for the people? Because I think one of the things they've really forgotten is they're here to work for the people of their country.
I would agree with pretty much everything you just said, Sarah. I think most of your listeners would, most of the country on both sides of the US Canada border would agree with that. The people who are sort of opposed to it, not quite as on board, are the civil servants themselves,
Mhm.
because
They got a good
most,
thing going.
when we look at corruption, regardless of where it is, it's not incidental or accidental.
Right,
Corruption exists because that's the way somebody wanted it, right? So long as that somebody still has power over it, they
right.
will maintain it.
Yeah.
Right. I recall to your comment about people getting elected. Kim Campbell, former prime minister,
Mm-hmm.
before she was PM, she was a provincial politician in British Columbia, where you're now based.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 1986, I think I'm taxing my memory here, also showing my age. In the, I think it was a social credit convention. She was one of the contenders against it was then Bill Van der Zem who won the race, and she had this epic one-line warning about the professional politician, about the difference between substance and
Mm.
style. And the line,
Yes.
charisma without substance is a dangerous thing.
Yes.
And within about, what's 5 or 6 years of that statement, the party that that gentleman led self-destructed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because he had charisma.
Yes.
And there's not much more than that, but he had the charisma.
Yes, I remember.
All right, we've got a political class that is a showboating class. It just is, and it's attracting usually a certain sort of person.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of person is not usually managerially capable, and you end up colliding once they get elected with an entrenched civil service, such that you end up with an implied bargain between the civil service and the political class. The civil service will make the politician look good, provided the politician doesn't interfere with what the civil service wants. So over the course of 11 years, when I approached political figures, they were very sympathetic. Sarah, giving me every support short of help
Right.
because they don't want to go against the civil service.
But okay, so now we know. I mean, it's always been obvious, but you've really articulated that um, a lot of these people are actually scared of the civil service.
Yes.
Right. And obviously, the civil service servant people have got way too much power. And,
Yeah.
when you look at history, you had your mafioso ruling everything, and we still do have these corruptions of people having to pay people for protection, to run their businesses. It's we've got the cartel, we've got this and that, but everything seems to have its day. And that day is when people rebel and say, no more, we're going to stand up together and hold accountable. And you're standing up and holding accountable, but you're inviting people to stand up next to you and say, look, this isn't just affecting me. This is unknowingly affecting you. You may not need something at the present moment, but when you do, where is the justice? Because the
Yes.
civil service will decide it for you, not a judge and not justice, not the rights, but really the pocket.
That's correct. One of the lessons that I've learned in the last 11 years, Sarah, is that for every person you hear about that's being targeted like this, there are thousands that you
Mm,
don't hear about, that for whatever reason, they're crushed beforehand.
yeah.
Without getting too personal on it, I'm not married. I don't have a family. If I did, I probably wouldn't be standing right now because
Mm,
the burden is
yeah.
frankly, I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal, okay? But
No.
it is great when you've
Yeah.
got these other situations. Those folks have no recourse. They're
Mm,
just casualties.
yes. And haven't we got to be a human nation where we just think, oh, just a casualty of the cause? Isn't one casualty too many?
Well,
Why aren't we not, saying let's look at prevention instead of going, just throw the people away. It's just a casualty.
it takes will, is what it comes out
Mm,
to. And
yes.
the fact that when you look through history, you mentioned figures in history a moment ago, and you look at major societal changes, when you had a society that was going a certain way, and then you had like a watershed moment and they switched to something else. And let's just put our politics to a side for a second. You look at major leaders like a Gorbachev or a
Yeah.
Thatcher or a
Yes.
Trump or something like that, a major figure. It's interesting to note, Sarah, that each of these, regardless of their place in the spectrum, are tragically flawed figures.
Oh,
But
yes.
a few things that happen to work very well for change. And one of the biggies was that they could stand up against the weight of entrenched interests to
Mm-hmm.
change the structure of that society. Sometimes for good, sometimes for ill, but that's frankly what we're looking for. Now, when you look at the group, say in your country, in Canada, who are running the thing, you start running through the names of the people who would have the will to be able to do that, and it's a pretty small list. It's a short list. We don't tend as a society to reward persons with a lot of backbone, rewarding people who sound good, rewarding the
Mm.
charisma.
Where, it's all very well, where, I feel that as a society, we've become very much a headline society. A tinsel headline looks good, but we don't look at context or content. We don't look at really what is the root of something. We're buying the flash.
Yes,
And then it's rather like empty calories, and we're wondering why we're still hungry because we're not eating anything or devouring anything nutritious. It's just one garbage after the other. And what it's done, it's caused our psyche to be constantly in a state of hysteria. And we are seeing more anxiety and more depression and more angst right now. And what happens when you have people in that state? They're the last people to get up and fight against the system. So there is a conductor out there that's making sure that the chute is constantly being stirred. Because when you keep people afraid or you keep them anxious or they go down depression road, they are not going to rock the boat. They're just going to comply for peace sake.
yes, they're in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, if you only use that word survival, you mentioned the word earlier on, it was fatigue. And they just get overwhelmed by this
Yes.
constant barrage of
Yeah.
things to be worried about,
Yeah.
such that they are effectively paralyzed for action to do
Yes.
anything. It is that sense of helplessness that is preyed upon by so many people right now.
Mm-hmm. I have a saying, we enough of the activism, let's get into actionism. Activism, we're talking about it, but I think we've got to a point where it's like, okay, I've heard this. What can I do about it? Where's the actionism? And, people want to be able to do something where they don't feel that they're standing out there alone and everybody's way back waiting to see whether you get trampled on or not. You've been trampled on. You've had to leave your country. They've got an arrest warrant out for you, anything to shut you up, which obviously at this point, because you're here, you're not going to be shut up. You're going to keep on talking until somebody joins you to say, enough is enough. Where's the accountability? We've got to understand people like yourself have brought the spotlight on the situation. But it's not just for sensationalism or for gossip or chat. It's for you to be invited to come and do something about it. Because the more we stand up as a mass, and say, no, this is unacceptable. Now I am aware this is unacceptable. And just like we would see, what do they call it when the tax people come in and look through your books? Sorry? Audit.
An audit?
Right. So we want to see an audit of the government. We want to see exactly who is getting the money, how they're getting the money. And I think there has to be an enormous audit of the government and its practices and a full disclosure. And the thing is, the government, again, is working for the people. And there should be full disclosure of everything they're doing. We've employed them.
Yes, Sarah, but the one outfit that doesn't want an audit is the government.
I know, but there's one way we need to audit.
The solution to your demand for a government audit is that they will audit themselves.
No,
and that's
not it. It has to be ethical, above board, with the right mind heart set to go in and look at it as it is and present it as it is. No bribery, no misconstruing the truth, no variations of it, showing us exactly what's going on.
Well, I'll drop another controversial name here. We're trying to not be political today, but Max Bernier, you may have heard of him. For your U.S. listeners, he's a party member of what's called what's their party called? People's Party in Canada. So he is right, center right, sort of on the spectrum, sort of populist. And I think he's got a party of one at this point. But back, he was Minister of Industry. And he was one of these tragically flawed people. But he actually believed exactly what you just said about auditing things. And he did an audit at Industry Canada, and he posted the results publicly. And they stayed up for 3 days. When the
Mhm.
civil service found what he did, they shut them all down. And he had he had the stern lecture, Sarah, is what he was given, so that it never happened again. Now, curiously, the Taxpayers Federation took screenshots of all of that. They
Right.
caught it. And if you recall, there was hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, cumulatively several billions, that had been demonstrated in this audit, flowing to, let's say, aligned interests in the commercial world.
Mhm.
It's supposedly been signed off by various government programs, but if you look at the dates, the chronology was they received the dollars, and after that, they filled out the application for the grants. This
Uh-huh.
is the reality, and that's the kind of thing that happens in these audits. It is not dirty, it's absolutely filthy.
Mhm.
And it's one more thing before I shut up on this point, because this one really gets me. Sarah, not just cleaning up the government, is what do you do once you've got the info? Because the people doing this have committed crimes, and
Yes.
a lot of them. That means you've got hundreds of civil servants that would be prosecuted. And my goodness, that's inspiration for the civil service to shut down any of the audit that you're referring to. You almost, get ethical here, but my goodness, you almost have to give them some kind of immunity in order to get the cleanup. Because if you don't give
Yeah.
them the, you're not getting the cooperation.
Yeah. It's kind of like we're going to fire you without a reference, but I'm not going to um, charge you with a criminal act.
Almost like if you
Yeah.
come clean, you're
Yes.
good. Find it, you're finished. That
You're
kind of
right.
thing.
Exactly. But that then again, again in history, when we look at it, look how they brought down Al Capone for goddamn accountancy, right? Um, Nothing to do with how many people he murdered, but it's they got him. In the end, they got him. And I think what we have to have is, the good thinking caps have to come together. How can we do this in a way that is public all the way, that can't be taken down? Because again, if you've got masses of amount of people putting up the same information from different sources at the same time, it's very hard, other than them pulling the plug on the internet, right, to shut it up. Again, we see mass hysteria and how it can really go so very wrong. But how about mass collaboration, fighting for the same thing and being a choir rather than a single voice? And we don't want rant to rave. We don't want pitchforks. We don't want horns perpetually on the goddamn car. We want action that is also above board, but it's
Yes.
holding accountable. And it's when people come together with that intent, good intent. As I said, no pitchforks. If we have that, then we've just, taken away, we've joined the club, right?
Yes.
It's the other side. So if we want to hold them accountable, then we need to be above reproach ourselves.
Yes. Yes. No, I completely agree with that. The fact is, though, that if this keeps on going, eventually all the above board activism is going to get absolutely nothing done. And this is actually the worry that I've got right now, is that if we let it go beyond the point where we can institutionally correct it, then we end up with that lovely British quote from years ago. You might know the attribution, I can't recall it, but it goes, if government will not enforce law on behalf of the people, it'll find people enforcing law on behalf of the government. And that's a sort of de facto vigilantism that
Yeah.
takes. That is incredibly dangerous. I mean, you think we got it bad now. It's infinitely worse when you have an actual structural collapse of the judicial system.
Yes. It's kind of I think, it's I mean, what we would love to do is, I don't know if you remember that show, Designated Survivor, where they killed all the politicians off, and this one civil servant then became president because he was the only one that survived. And I think it was kind of the wishful thinking, of let's just clear the slate and build again, right? And it turns out to be something corrupted anyway. But I think what we do is, rather like Al Capone and the accountancy, it is go somewhere that's vulnerable. Even the
Yeah.
dragon has a vulnerable spot. Now, if you're going to be in front of the face of the fire, you're going to get burnt. But if you go to that vulnerable plot where the soft spot is, and you go after the soft spot, then you're going to start seeing other things start to kind of be revealed and literally go through department, department, department. Yes, it's going to be an enormous shakeup. Yes, we're going to see, government collapsing in many places, but then there is the opportunity to refresh. Just about, we're all accountable for our own lives. Things that happen to us, we may not have control. What we do with it and whom we become because of it is in our control. And that also means in our society as a whole, what is our contribution and how we stepping up to be a part of the solution.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not in any way disparaging people going out there and picketing and protesting things because we need that.
Peacefully.
That's sort of what I'm doing in a way. I mean, I wrote a book and I'm on
Right.
your show around the block. But we can't end it there. We actually have to start actively doing things to make the changes that we're asking for. And I would look in Canada right now. I mean, the rumor is that there's an election coming up in April. We'll see how that goes. But there is an election at some point on the horizon. Now is actually a very good time to start getting involved in your local political realm, right?
Shake things up.
Just do a little Rolodex in your head. Who would be a good candidate? Who'd be an honorable candidate? Who's got the brains for it? Who can take on the might of the administrative state? Who is that? Identify them, because people don't know this, but my goodness, it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to get a candidate from identification to getting them on the nomination papers. Then you have to get them nominated. Then you got to it's quite a process. It's a bureaucratic process.
Yes. Civil service process.
You got to put in the time to do that. You got to sacrifice. And the moment you do, you're right, you're going to be targeted.
Yes.
Because there are lots of other people who want the job who maybe aren't quite as ethical. But we're not going to see this change, Sarah, if we don't actually do the work to get the right people in place to make those changes actually happen.
You may have some politicians that really have gone into politics for the right reason. And then unfortunately, they realize that it is a sewer and that if they're going to survive, they're going to have to swim in that sewer, whether they like it or not. And then some people just simply become contaminated and that's it. And other people maybe try and rise up above it and reveal what it is. We do have the power now to reveal truth and facts. Now, of course, we have many, many people that will look at a fact and, you would say that, like me, I'm a white person with blue eyes, a woman, and somebody will maybe disagree with that and tell me I'm something else because we're not even addressing those people because they're part of the problem. They're buying into the delusion of everything. We don't want to see a January 6th go on anywhere. That is not how we resolve anything. But we do want to see kind of the village and the communities coming together, standing arm in arm, and making sure that everything is documented along the way. Film, audio, written, live, to make sure that everything is held accountable and stand up and say, enough is enough. Government is meant to work for the people. There's virtually no country in the world at the present moment that isn't going through some sort of garbage. And this is why we have so much, imbalance in the world. And so many people giving up and so many people rising to the cream top through corruption because it's so easy for them to get away with it.
Yes, it is. Yes, absolutely it is. A couple of things there. You're going to find, as you start getting into actually doing, not just complaining, but doing, that you're going to find allies in places you aren't expecting.
Right.
In my case, there were two allies I'm going to highlight here for you. I used to live in Calgary before I had to flee the country. And my local MP was a guy named Rob Anders. And for people in the United States, Rob Anders is very similar to Donald Trump, actually. He just without the power. And he had the same kind of tact and diplomacy, let's say. Very right wing. But he was my MP, and he went to bat for me. And he did a very good job. You wouldn't expect that, but he was competent. He was capable. He did a very good job. At the same time, another person backing me was the Honorable Sheila Copps, who is the equivalent of Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
So opposite ends of the spectrum. And yet, I took car trips with Sheila Copps on this issue, trying to work through the government relations program. You're going to find people that are allied with you in certain areas that can get the job done, who believe in accountability and transparency and integrity in government, but you might not agree with them on anything else.
Right.
We've got to work with the other side in those areas of agreement. And we
Mm.
can start sparring on the other stuff later on. That's how we get productive. Like that's a concrete way that we can make progress on these issues.
Get the car out of the garage, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Get it going. Um, I think if anybody is in la la land saying, no, no, not my government, no, this is a whole bunch of lies, no, this has never happened, it's just wishful thinking. We know that we as a human race are so easily corrupted. We know that money is power, but we also know that, because I'm very much about the consciousness rising. That's just really what self-discovery media is all about. And that as that consciousness rises, many, many people are in pain right now because as the consciousness awakens, they look at and we realize just how much harm we inflict upon each other, just how nasty we are to each other. And some people can get caught up in that and traumatized by it, and other people can go, well, I want to do better. I'm willing to go through the process and step up to that higher frequency, one quite simply of love. Because when you're in that state of higher frequency of love, you can't knowingly hurt someone else because it's going to hurt you to do so. And if we could get people to that higher consciousness, it really won't matter what the political is, what the color of the religion or anything else is, because you're working out on a frequency of equality, of good vibrations, of being creative where everybody has a chance. And when we're looking at what has been, whether it's government, whether it's corporations, whether it's pharma, NRA, and everything else, they've been in power for so long because nobody was rising up. And the more we rise up, the more we're going to shed light on it. The more we shed light on it, and we blind them and we start changing things. But persistence needs to be there, but it has to come from a higher consciousness of the intent behind it, not the intent to gain for your own personal gain, but to gain for the collective as a whole.
Granted. And the first website that I did on this, the one I mentioned earlier on about chronicling the whole 11 years, was actually called Restore CSA. CSA is the government agency that's doing all this to me. Notice the word restore. It wasn't about bashing over the head. It
Right.
wasn't about just, it was about let's clean it up. We do
Yes.
need, right? It's legitimate.
Yeah.
But we need a clean civil service, kind of like we need clean cops, right? Same
Yes.
idea.
Yes.
Just for your listeners, that particular site was actually banned by the government, so it's not there anymore, but it was called Restore CSA. So this is what you come in with, right? And you're going to find you'll make a lot more allies who can help you out if you're positive on constructive ways to resolve the issue rather than
Right.
just placard and complaints.
Exactly, exactly, because there's everything has to have a solution. When you come again up to that from that higher consciousness, you're more open to the creative thoughts between you. Okay, all right, this is the problem. How do we chisel away at that and reconstruct? We ask people to reconstruct their own lives, let go of old programming that's not serving them anymore, insert a different consciousness, a different programming that is more well-being to yourself as well as to others. It's the same type of principle being applied to all of these systems that we know at the present moment are not serving the masses, but serving the few. So it's going in there and looking at what the problem is. Okay, now how do we collectively, collaboratively look at resolving this situation? And as you said, not criminalizing the people that are doing it, right? Some people should be because they're at the top stirring it, and other people if they just want to keep their job, right? So it's looking at how do we make those changes openly and above board, publicly, in a way that maybe they would be grateful for on many scales, that somebody else has intervened and changed. Because it's very hard, I think, to be corrupt day in and day out without feeling it in your consciousness.
But you do get inured to it after a while.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
suppose so. Yeah, it's not something I identify with. But yes, but what happens to people who get very rich, they become very protective over their richness, and they become very paranoid, and they're going to do anything to protect, that apple cart, right? So, yeah, we don't want to go in and just disrupt everything because also in the chaos, you're going to lose what is happening. We need to be methodical as we look
yes.
at each thing. It's rather like when, a computer crashes. There's so many programs you've got to go through, right, to find out where the crash is, what the problem is. And it leads that kind of analytical mind to go and look in Okay, what data is not working? All right, and then for others to come across and say this is how we need to change that. So we do so need some methodical rationale on this approach.
Yeah, what you're describing is basically good judgment and a decluttering.
Yeah.
And it's almost, remember that TV show Hoarders from years ago?
Yes, yes.
Crammed full of garbage. And
Yeah.
it's the people living in there don't notice it. They
No.
become inured to it.
Yeah.
And it takes outsiders to come in, point out the problem, and help them clean up. Not condemning them for being there, but
No.
help declutter their house. We
Right.
need to do that for our house.
Yes. And, kind of, get to the root cause of, why was this in the first place? And that again is a few people are pocketing. And then it was like the contamination is so set in, it's just the norm, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we can't normalize that type of thing. It's, we have, we have at the present moment here in Canada, I know where I am, 6 million people without doctors. Right? We have people that are being undiagnosed and dying because they haven't got a doctor. We've got homelessness like crazy. We've got people, we've got rents going up, costs going up, and people just not being able to afford their lives. And you've got these other people who are pocketing, and that money is not being generated out into the whole. And that is inequality.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, it's inequality. And you're always, no matter what society you've got, you'll have some degree of inequality. That's
Oh,
true.
yes.
As long as I think the issue is whether or not that equality is cemented in place
Mm,
or whether there's a dynamism there. I mean, if you think of the average college student is very poor relative to how wealthy they will be when they retire.
yeah.
Wealth should be dynamic in the society, the freedom to rise as high as talent and
Hmm.
ambition, that kind of thing. But so often we're finding that there's a small group at the top that have a sort of monopoly, if you will, pardon the pun, on wealth.
Yes.
People at the bottom that can't seem to get anywhere.
Hmm.
That's kind of problematic, but it's also convenient because they're the ones who are funding a lot of the organizations that keep everything the way it is.
Right.
Right.
Suppress, suppress.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, we've got to realize that, the ceiling's coming down on us. We were not able to see the sky anymore. Like, suppress, suppress. But, going back to what I said before, if you keep people suppressed, you keep them in fear, you keep them in limitations, and then, they're just going to so busy trying to survive, they're not going to fight back. But as we know, through history, in every part of history, the revolution will come. And what we're
Yes.
asking for is an academic revolution where, again, no pitchforks. We don't want to see the guns or the this or the that. We want to see it more of a kind of a really analytical academic type approach to it of reveal exactly what's going on.
A lot of what you just described is happening, albeit in slow motion.
Yes.
It's just like this one. Every time you issue a program like this on a similar subject, people are learning more.
Hmm.
And we're getting sunlight shone upon the issue. If you clock back about, say, 10 years or so, the kind of discussion that we're having would be seem even more foreign back then.
Yes.
It's gradually people are sort of waking up to what's happening, how far we've slid in society, how corrupt it has become, and how important it is that we recover it. And that's a positive. So long as we
Yes.
keep building that sort of informal coalition,
Yeah.
when the opportunities arise, we'll have a larger little army that can be mobilized to take advantage of those and bring the kind of change we're talking about. So there
Right.
are positives here.
Yeah, we kind of have to keep that activism for the actionism to come in, right?
Yes.
And I've done many, many shows, whether it's been clergy, whether it's been police, or whether it's been military, whether it's been government, where injustice has prevailed. And you look at some of the cases, and you go that, but how? One case of a woman being severely beaten by her husband who was in the military. The police had an enormous case against him. The military protected him. It's the same with the church with sexual abuse. The same with a woman who was wrongfully dismissed. But unfortunately, the judge was paid off by the people that had dismissed her, and she had 8 years she was fighting in court only to lose. Right. And didn't matter what she wrote a book on it. She did shows with me on it, everything. There was no justice. And this is kind of, it gets my goat because this is wrong in this day and age when we meant to have the ability for so much more transparency. We're seeing so much more what does it say about the human race that you so easily can be bought off? And that an association, whether it be military, government, this or whatever, can stand by someone who's done such an unlawful or inhumane act. And what does it say about us as a human race? And I think when we hold that accountability and say no more, I want to stand for more than that, that's when we can start being a part of the change that's needed.
Exactly. And I'd add to that, whether it's a corrupt society or a clean one,
Mm,
it's being led by a relatively small number of people, for good or bad.
yeah.
With pejorative here, most people are what are called sheeple sometimes. They're
Yes.
happy to
Oh,
go
yes. Yes.
good leadership. When we focus on selecting honorable leadership, we will
Mm,
have a lot of folks that are perhaps a little dodgy right now being a little cleaner as a result. Without
mm,
having to change positions, without having to put them through the court process, they're going to clean up because they're led in a clean way. And that's
yeah.
what they talk about. A good CEO has a cultural effect all the way down the pyramid of the
Yes.
organization. Same thing in politics, same thing in government, same thing in the courts. It all comes down to who we select as people to be in the government.
I look at life as a circle. People like to put the CEO up on the pedestal and the janitor down at the bottom. And I always say that when you walk into a corporation and that place is dirty, immediately your mind is changed on how this corporation is run. So the janitor has set the stage. And I think if could have the circle, the janitor and the CEO and everybody else has a position in that company that makes that company what it is. And if each one of those people is in there because they feel proud to be in there, they feel they're contributing, they feel they're seen and heard, that they're appreciated, you're going to see that loyalty and that pride to make that company the best it can be because it's something they can stand for. We have a lot of pride in being Canadians, but well, half of us do not know what's going on. Right. And we see so much on the news or we see so much protest, but the protest we're seeing is in anger and angst, and we don't want to be a part of that. We want to be a part of that accountability. A, B, C, D fact, please defend that and recognize that it's wrong. And will you, government, be a part of it with us to change? And
Yes.
again, it needs the chorus.
Yes, everybody has a rightful role. You
Yeah.
mentioned the janitor. These are different roles, but they're
Yes.
not different importances. They're
Right.
relative to what the job requirement is,
Yeah.
right? That dynamism business, you may be a janitor today, but 10 years from now, you'll be the CEO. So
Right.
everybody has an importance. The importance is only sacrificed when people listen to a broadcast like this and just let it go. Don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
We all have a role. We all have significance. We all have a responsibility as well, then to take what action is within our realm of opportunity to make the kind of change that we want to see happen. I come back to a comment I think you made or some one of us made a little while ago, holding a placard.
Mm,
That's I'm not dismissing it, okay? But if that's all we're doing, we're not getting much done.
no.
We have a responsibility to do more than that. Or we
And if we are going to hold that placard, who's standing united with us? Are we peaceful in the approach? Now, you have professional rebel rivals that go to protest to stir things up. I know this, I've met them because I've been, part of it on the ecology side of things. And that's all they do. They're the shoot stirrers. They go in, and of course, then what does the news do? It hones in on the disruption and not on the peaceful protest. So I think this is like, go to your media and invite them to be a part of it. Whether it's written media, whether it's bloggers, whether it's TV, whether it's radio, ask them to be a part of that event, to record that event, to interview people as to why they're there, and whether the news captures it or not, because they'll go and look for some problem they can highlight, not the reason. Make sure that they publish on whatever their arena is, why people are there, what they're trying to draw the case, and not be afraid of the retaliation from the government. Because if you've got everybody doing it at the same time, it's a little hard for them to come down and shut everyone down at the same time without drawing attention to the fact, why are you wanting them to be silent?
it'll backfire on them if they try that sort of thing.
Yes, that's why
The
it
other
needs
thing,
to be all done together, right? Collaboration.
all of these people you're talking about are getting off of the couch, as it were, and actually
Yes,
doing things. Dealing with the media, my advice would be to be relentless, not
yes,
rude,
right.
but relentless. People need to understand that in this day and age, it's so easy to send an email to thousands of reporters around the world that reporters are getting absolutely deluged every morning with hundreds of emails, and you're going to get lost if you're
Yes,
not.
right.
So let's have some sympathy for them. They're wading through so much more information than they were even 10 years ago
Yes,
that
so
we need
much
to
garbage out there. Yeah. Do you
do.
remember the show called The Newsroom back in 2010? They did 3 seasons. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. And basically, it was kind of when news was changing, where people would talk about the facts. And this one guy was talking about why America isn't great. And of course, he got flack for it. But it was showing the transition of how sponsors and how corporations were dictating what the news should be. No, no, we don't want to mention that. No, you can't say that. No, you can't put that out on air. And it's like where we used to have, there's somebody deliver what was happening in a neutral manner. We don't see that anymore. And of course, we don't trust what we see anymore because we don't know how much of it is being fabricated. And so this is why I'm saying if it is a collaboration collectively, uh, cohesively, all at the same time, coming from so many different mediums. And that means we need a conductor that can bring everybody together to do this, all right, to get all these wonderful um, artisans together and everybody puts it out at the same time. In other words, you're not competing with one another as a news agency, you are supporting one another to get this out there, even if it starts shaking things up, to put the spotlight on the problem and say to the public, this is what the problem is, and then say to the government, we've revealed this, what are you going to do about it?
And this is where we have to be able to work with these people in the news industry that we may not agree with,
Right?
and have a different perspective because they're being driven by the need to entertain people, which
Yes.
it takes over giving news. And
Well,
so we
going back
very
to the headliners, right? Stimuli instead of fact and reason. Yeah.
or they want drama. And there's
Yes.
nothing dramatic in some self-destruction of somebody somewhere. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for actual concrete solutions to problems. And that takes more mental engagement. It doesn't fit in a soundbite terribly well.
No.
And so it goes against what a lot of the media is sort of stuck with right now. And that's where more persistence is needed. To your comment about a chorus, you've mentioned that a couple of times now. And I'll mention the election again. You got election coming up. If you got people cropping up on the same kind of issue from all over the place,
Right.
hard to ignore that. And even if 10 demonstrations gets you one message out on the networks, well, that's one message than you had before.
Yes.
So it's productive. You are making progress, even if it doesn't feel like it.
Right. That people have book clubs, and I say have a podcast club. Listen to a podcast collectively together with a bunch of friends, and then at the end of it, take down notes, and then at the end of it, share
Yes.
what this hit me, or that I have a point on, or I didn't agree with this, or I did agree with that, and then already you've got it's not like, oh, I've listened to this and it's daunting, I don't know where to start. We've listened to this and we know that collectively something needs to be done. And now that inspiration becomes the invitation to be a part of that solution.
That's right. And everybody in the room is able to contribute some new aspect you may not have thought of on your own. And
Exactly.
are supported. And this, by the way, is what's called community, incidentally.
Mm.
It also broadens your friendship circle, your social circle. I mean, this is incredibly healthy. It's what society used to be all about, only a few
Yes.
years ago.
Yes. Well, I always say that the village is only as strong as its participants, and everybody has to be supportive of each other no matter what's going on. Otherwise, the village breaks down. And society as a whole has broken down because we've allowed outside influence instead of our collective influence protecting us from the outside.
Yeah. It's a bit of discernment there about knowing who's a friend and who isn't,
Yes.
who's for the right reasons, who isn't. You know what a Judas goat is? You know what that refers to?
Or Judas the betrayer.
Oh, a Judas goat
Oh,
in agricultural, when you're trying to lead sheep to slaughter, they'll
oh.
often introduce a goat that's specially trained to mingle with the sheep and then lead the sheep to the slaughterhouse. And the
Mm,
sheep will innocently follow the goat. They rescue the goat, and all the sheep get killed.
right.
So politics can be like that. We've
Yeah.
got to watch the Judas goats out there because there are quite a few of them. It's a
And
very
yeah, we've got to realize that again, if somebody may go into politics with good intent and then realize they've become a sheeple and they don't want to rock the boat because they're going to be penalized. And so they kind of go along with it and kind of turn a blind eye to what's going on. Let's empower them to have a voice. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at the January 6 rulings, and you've got people that, were Trumpsters coming up and speaking, at knowing there was going to be ridicule, knowing there was going to be backlash, but saying, no, I have to speak out. I have to speak out to what is happening. I applaud their courage and their strength because they know this is not a popularity contest, but this is the truth. And we've got to stop buying the kind of the fake news or the band-aid that people put over there and start demanding that, well, where is the core of this truth? Where is the core of this truth? Now, your book has given us that core when we're allowed to see it, which we hope that Amazon is brave enough to put it up in the next little while, because everywhere try and put it up, they try and ban it, which they've successfully done right now. But in the book, you are revealing facts of your own story, but facts of is literally what has happened and what's been revealed to you.
That's right, and it's not data heavy, but it's data reference heavy. And what
Mm,
I've done, I recognize I can't send your listeners to buy the book because it's banned right now. But for reference, our Deep Six Diaries website has an evidence tab. I want to make sure that what I'm saying in the book is buttressed. It's facts. It can be
yes.
debated, it can be reviewed. On that evidence tab, I've got on there a searchable database of over 82,000 original documents in PDF for
Wow.
people to look at. So when they see things in that book that say, wow, that's kind of like our talk early on about bribing of public officials.
Mm,
Would a judge really do this?
mm.
Well, you could go online and find the ruling and read it to your own satisfaction. And that's the kind of thing I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, Sarah, but my
No, no.
goodness,
I mean, this has been, your redirection in life. You were happily going along your life, and then this got served to you, and now it's actually become your calling in many ways.
well, and we've got to do, when we act on that call, we've got to do it in a responsible way,
Yeah.
yes, way.
Yes.
Also have to be, in a sense, data heavy. We've got to make available the evidences that are there so that we're not speaking in a vacuum. We're not just another voice people can ignore. We're the voice you can count on because we've got the data to back up everything we're saying.
Right. And the data there is in black and white. If you want to dispute it with the people that put it out. Right. So, we have, as I said, got to a point where we're headliners and we refuse to read content or context of the content. Um, because we know as a human race, we've been led to be lazy, or led to that, just buy into the sensationalism of the headline and not look at because they don't want you to read. They don't want you to know. Because when you know, then you're going to go, well, what can I do about it? But we're begging you, please, to be a part of this, because whatever age you are, and I'm 68, I've got grandchildren. I don't want this corruption to be something that's still very much in their lives as they grow up. We are already up against so much in life. We've got a massive amount of eco change going on. We've got to change our practices. We have to change the way we treat each other. We've got to change so much in our direction in our life. We don't want the burden for our poor little children that we've already given them a mess to clean up. We want to help them with that mess and say sorry that we didn't kind of pay attention to it earlier, but we're here now. This is your future that we're cleaning it up for, so we want you to be a part of it as well.
And that's a compelling statement right there. That's the sort of finalized message that I think these people need to take away. They are part of the solution. They've got the opportunities to do this. So be on the lookout for them so we can all actually see some of these changes really happen. The last thing we want to have is another happy discussion with you in 10 years' time, complaining about the same things all over again.
No, 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 no. I mean, this site, we will talk about what the problem is, but it's always where's the empowerment? What can we do about it? It's the same thing in it. Stuff's going to happen to you in life. That's life. The experiences you're going to happen, and some things are going to be very unpleasant, and you're going to get stuck sometimes in it. But when the light kind of gets shone on it, and like you don't have to stay stuck. This is how you get through it, through somebody else's inspiration, from somebody else's skill and tools. And then you walk through it and you discover, I'm so much stronger, courageous, I have more skills, I have more ability. I was selling myself short. Where I am now is where I'm meant to be, doing what I'm meant to be doing, whether we like it or not. And you didn't want to go down this path, it's been chosen for you. But we always need somebody that's going to start that ball rolling. And, I do commend your courage because you literally had to give up your country to do this. So, it's a tough one. You can't go home without facing arrest. And we talk about countries like China and Iran, and we expect that there, but we don't expect that in Canada.
We can be in Iran very easily, just as easily as Iran could be in Iran. We've got to constantly be vigilant,
Yes.
constantly.
Yes. Yes. If we while we look at other countries and go, this is wrong, well, why don't we look in our own backyard and go, look, see what's going on here? All right. Because A, we don't want to become that. And B, we want to know that we're nipping things in the bud. That we have the power as people, we have the power to make the change, and it's up to us. So the book is called Deep Six Diaries. An anonymous editor, Gordon Knight. It's not available right now, but please keep coming back to the show page here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. And all you have to do is put in his name, Gordon Knight, Knight, and you'll see his show page. And when it is available on Amazon, the link will be there. And please get the conversation going. Now, there is a site that people can go to.
There is Deep Six Diaries, so deep number six diaries.com. You can get information about the book. We can't sell it there right now, but you can get information on it. You can get a bit of background on what I'm describing. And the evidence tab is a place you might want to play with. There's a lot of data on what we've been discussing. Certain of the documents that we talked about here are also going to be available there for people to review.
Right. And so, okay, there's a lot of information here. And you may go, well, this is too overwhelming. We're not asking you to jump in and swim the marathon. We're asking you actually just to put your toes in and, gradually get wet. You don't have to do a dive, right? And, read one thing, digest it, and then read another. But when you read it, yes, you're going to be, God, how did I not know this is going on? But at the same time, keep putting in the back of your mind, okay, what can we do about it? And every time you have an idea, write it down, please. Write it down. And then when you start discussing the book or discussing the podcast or discussing his website with other people, go, look, this really shook me up, or this really surprised me. I'd like you to listen, read, or look at it. And what can we do about it? Because everything starts from a seed. You've already planted the seed. You've got the tree of knowledge for everyone to pick from. But now we want them to pick it and start some more seed planting so that, the movement will grow into making the change that's necessary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just as a aside, this kind of a program that you're doing is frankly very refreshing because it's all organized on how do we actually make things happen as opposed to how do we just complain about it.
Right.
And that's something we value that, absolutely, and then let's act on it ourselves.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, I'm afraid that's the way I look at life. There's a whole load of stuff going on out there that we don't like, but we forget that we actually have the power within us to make the change. And, I say it starts with us, looking at, how compliant or complacent am I? That even knowing this stuff and then deciding not to even talk about it or not do anything about it, even if you just start off talking about it with your friends and your friends or your colleagues at work go, I don't believe you. Well, listen to this or read that. The facts are there. Start that ball rolling. And then there might be somebody along that line that goes, you know what? I'm starting a movement. Let's get going. Right. But you've got to just kind of keep feeding it because we can't ignore this, whether you're living in Canada or living in the States, because this goes on in the States as well. This is government pretty well, around the world. We've got to hold our government people who we pay with our taxes, we pay them. We've got to hold them accountable because they're meant to be here supporting and helping us thrive as a human nation. And if their interests are only of their own at the expense of what we see that's going on in 2023, we still see hunger, we still see homelessness, we still see medical crisis, we still see so many things, infrastructure, so many things that need to be addressed to. Where are our taxes going? I think we actually have a right to say as citizens of our country, audit. We want to know.
At the audit party.
Yes, I think that's a good idea, right? The audit party. Yes, reveal. We want to know. Nobody hiding behind anything. Reveal. And then if we promise no prosecution, but at the same time, maybe elimination, no longer in the job, and insert people in there that are willing to do the cleanup and the reconstruct and putting us back on the right path. And it's a long journey. This is not happening overnight. But even to get it going, we as a nation have to stand up and say, this isn't just sensationalism. Oh, do you know what the government is doing? It is, let's talk about it. How can we be a part of that solution? And whether you write or whether you share it on social media or whether you share it with your friends, have the conversation, get it going, because those conversations have a way. Please don't sensationalize. Please stick to the facts. The facts are already sensational enough. We don't want any drama or sensationalizing them because then it loses its meaning. Stick to the facts. Cut and paste one of his facts that he's got on his site, share it on your social media. Let's have a conversation about it. There's so many ways you can be proactive, right? We're not asking you to join a protest. Your protest can just even be, are you aware this is going on, right? It shocked me. Does it shock you? Let's have a conversation. And yes, you will get trolls. And yes, you do have the right to delete the trolls because we want people to have a healthy conversation, no bashing, because that's not going to get us anywhere. Thank you for your courage. And, I'm sorry that, and we want you to be able to come back to Canada, walk free, and you are the person of this movement of holding it accountable, and let's get behind you and support you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It has been a heck of a journey, but life's a big place and the future is even bigger. So I might be back for too long. Let's hope so.
Good. And you have to keep us updated as to progress of what's going on for sure, because again, that is a way of keeping that nurturing going out. This is an update, from when I last had him on, and this is, we're getting the momentum going. Folks, we can do it. Let's get behind him, right? Because if we don't, then we're just going la, 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 la. It's nothing to do with me. Oh, yes, it is. It's to do with all of us, whether we like it or not. And we've got to be a part of the solution. And if we are, you can take pride in the fact that you were part of that solution because you didn't ignore the fact you decided to stand up. And that's a really cool place to be. Thank you so much, Gordon.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Take care.
Until next time, folks. Bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Find all of our shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com under podcasts or selfdiscoverymedia/shows. And for all our current shows, go to What's New. We are supported by you, the audience. You'll see a nice big shiny blue button for one-time donations or follow us on Patreon and you will be able to support us there. We enjoy bringing you such wisdom. And the next show will be up in just a moment.